Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Move Monday. We got Max here to help out today with me, I guess, and say things are amazing. But importantly,
Amazing.
let's go through introductions. So I'm a founding engineer here at Aptos and the usual host of Move Monday, as well as Max here is the second usual host of Move Monday from the past. He doesn't come on as much anymore. But I would like to then start with Jill next.
Hey folks, my name is Jill. I'm also a software engineer working at Aptos, mainly working on user-facing or developer-facing products to make Aptos accessible to everyone.
Great. And now we have two special guests from Beware. So let's start with Flavian, then Alex.
Hey guys, I'm Flavian. I'm the CEO of Beware Labs and also software engineer at Background. I lead the BD team and also involved in a lot of other stuff as well. So I'll give the mic to Alex next.
Hello everyone, I'm Alex. I'm a co-founder at Beware Labs and the smart contract development lead. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Well, let's start with the topic that everyone's been waiting for about how we actually ended up identifying the problem of delegated staking. Alex, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, in the ecosystem, there may be a lot of validators, like experienced people and companies that can run a validator node, secure it, and monitor it. But there is this barrier, the financial barrier of the minimum stake that stop these people and organizations to join the network and further decentralize it. So basically, that was the identified problem, right? So the solution was to include the community, right? And let people to contribute without having the technical expertise to run a validator, maintain it, monitor it, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think the important thing here also is like the decentralization that comes into play with allowing everyone to easily stake their tokens.
I totally agree.
Actually, I have an interesting story on how this started. So we identified the problem, and we were initially thinking that this might be a product of our own, and we presented the solution to the Aptos team, and together we decided that the best place for this to be implemented was at framework level, in a way in which everyone could benefit of this implementation. So instead of being like a selfish way of seeing it, like our own product, we decided that this is better for it to be implemented at framework level, and everyone could benefit from it. So this was happening like 6 months ago.
So for people's context, before you could stake if you had 1 million APT, right?
Yeah.
With this new contract, what's the minimum to be able to stake?
It's 11 Aptos, I think. This constraint is enforced due to security measures, but it's a decent amount.
Yeah, I'd like to hop in and talk a little bit about like how we got to where we are and why this is so critical. When we started this whole project out, we actually went through about, I'd say, 5 different designs of on-chain staking. Originally, we wanted to actually have delegation and have like a really, really rich experience for everybody. But ultimately, what we discovered was if you go through a very naive development process where you're like, I'm going to have at the end of each epoch, I'm going to have my rewards computation. I'm going to go through every single staker and every single delegator and push out to them their rewards for contributing to the staking pool. You quickly come into a situation where you can have an epoch ending take roughly minutes to execute. And that would mean effectively at a 2-hour interval, the blockchain would be unavailable for, say, 5 minutes, which is completely unacceptable. And so we started pivoting away from having this fully complete system towards the minimally viable with a much more of a pull-based framework. And so the way staking currently works in Aptos is I push out my stake into the actual governance platform. The governance platform will track a minimal set of actual stakers and just simply at the end of each epoch push to them their rewards. And so at that point in time, it's up to the stakers to dictate the way in which delegations or third parties may be able to get the assets or rewards for their contributions. And so specifically in that case, what we end up doing in earlier examples where we had a handful of smaller pools of fixed participants is that they get a portion of that rewards. And so we have this thing called a pool. And so that pool is just shared amongst them. And what I think what we did when we started working with you folks over at Be Aware was let's kind of continue to push this concept, but make it more generally available to the broader audience. And so I'd actually be really curious if you could share some of your insights as you kind of took this model that we started with the fixed set of individuals and scaled it out to the broader audience and how that ended up coming together.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, David, the idea is to make the delegated staking pool-based. Basically, the delegator itself is responsible for triggering a calculation and a claim of its rewards. So basically, you limit the number of staking pools by that minimum amount. Well, that's not the main purpose, but you have 1 million Aptos at least, which is like upper bounding the number of validators. So the computation at the end of the epoch is bounded too. So we tried to keep the things independent. So basically the delegation pool is just a separate bookkeeping for delegators, which doesn't involve any iteration over the list of participants in each of the pools. They simply come along later and they trigger indeed a recalculation of their portion of the rewards produced by the validator. So this scales well with the protocol. It doesn't affect the computation at the epoch boundaries. So the complexity remained the same as in your initial implementation of the staking module, the Genesis one.
So to kind of go further down that path, so what are the unique features and aspects that your contract brings into the space? And what, like, I'd love to know what was the big challenge in going from like the fixed set to the dynamic set that you folks have brought to the table.
So, like, I will discuss this in more detail and chronological order. Basically, you have to start with an entity that's able to hold the stake of multiple parties, but be inaccessible to the outside world, right? So you need a mediator to talk to the staking module, the underlying module in the framework, and forward the stake management operations to it, like add stake, unlock, when you schedule stake for unlocking, withdraw, or reactivate if you change your mind and want to reactivate your stake to continue to produce rewards. So firstly, there is the concept of the resource account, which is created. This account is used as a manager for the stake of each individual delegator. it can manipulate the entire stake of the underlying pool, but there is some bookkeeping in the delegation pool which doesn't allow you as a delegator to control more stake than originally owned, basically. So this is just how the manipulation takes place on the stake pool. The stake pool sees only one entity that's talking to it. Now, on the delegation pool, the main accounting is achieved through a data structure called the shares pool. Basically, all delegators use their Aptos, their stake, to buy shares into that internal shares pool. That pool is implemented at pool U64 in the framework. So basically, the delegators have shares in the pool. The validator will produce rewards, which are added on top. This process appreciates the value of the existing shares. Each delegator is free to redeem its shares at any time in the future, but the shares they own will be worth more than when initially deposited. So basically, that's how the delegators get rewarded without actually traversing the list of delegators. They simply have shares which are not modified anymore after they added stake or removed stake. They simply appreciate by adding stake over the pool, the internal pool, and this is quite scalable.
Indeed. And so just kind of circling back, as I think we kind of started out, like right now, the current app, prior to your work, you'd have to have 1 million APT, and now you only require 11 APT to actually go in and provide staking or delegation to the network, which means that you're now able to actually help secure the network. And so I'm kind of curious, you mentioned 11 APT had a security nature to it. Could you just briefly walk us through why we chose 11 and maybe a little bit more detail so people can appreciate the nuance here?
Yeah. So even though it's a bit frustrating and not user-friendly, UX-friendly, it's a psychological barrier at least, right? Because 11 APT is not a lot, like compared to the initial entry requirement. The problem is this shares pool, because we are dealing with integer divisions which cause truncation errors, right? So basically, when you calculate your balance, you have to do some maths underlying. Your shares are multiplied by the current share price on the pool and gives you the balance you own at the moment. But because of the errors involved, someone can manipulate a fresh, a newly created pool. Someone can manipulate it and continuously add these truncation errors on top. Because if the share price is, for example, 1.2 octa, if you join the pool and buy shares for 2 octas, you will receive 1 share back and 1 octa will remain on the pool as rewards. You increased the share price a bit, so you continuously do that, exponentially adding more error on top. So you may cause the share price to raise as much as 100 APT, 1000 APT. So the next users, the next delegators that are buying shares after you may lose 1000 APT, right? Because that will be like the reminder of the integer division. So that's not all right. And in order to make this attack infeasible, for anyone, regardless of how much money they have to spend on gas and stake. You have to ensure there are sufficient coins stake. There is sufficient stake on the shares pool at all times. That's why a delegator is required to stake at least 11 APT, because even though there is only one delegator, 11 APT is enough to ensure no one can exploit the share price and increase it for the following delegators to add stake. That will be the explanation for that.
Perfect. And I really appreciate you going to the depths there. I'm curious, how hard, or is it even feasible to try to reduce that through like a different approach, or are we kind of looking at the best that we'll be able to provide inside the space?
Well, during the development phase, there were multiple solutions that we discussed internally with the Aptos team, within Beware, with the OtterSec team that found the problem in the audit. And this one is the most not convenient, but easy to implement. Basically, is the safest one you can add to ensure that exploit cannot be achieved. There is another theoretical one, which involves creating fake coins and shares within the pool that belong to nobody, but are taken into account when doing the calculus. So basically, those losses end up on a ghost delegator, which doesn't have the stake initially, but is granted coins and shares, is granted shares within the pool when the pool is created. But this solution, even though mathematically it stands, it's more complicated to test and audit. So maybe that will be the way to go in the future. But at the moment, I think this is the best of both worlds.
Alex, I have a question. I remember there was something on pool 64, like an improvement. I don't know if it really fixes this issue or it was related to others.
Yeah, it was like the initial version of the pool 64 was enumerable. So you have the list of all shareholders in the pool. And we decided we should make it not enumerable in order to be scalable, because otherwise it would be quite expensive to remove a shareholder, for example. You have to search it through the whole list if its shares reach 0. So yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the underlying problem with the shares pool.
So kind of continuing on from there, I think the next thing that I'm particularly interested in is, now that it's been launched, I think it's been a few days or more, what's the actual impact? Have you actually seen people coming to the contracts through the different front ends? Like what's your knowledge about the broader usage of this thus far?
Just a second. I've just opened the Explorer. I haven't checked. I haven't checked the progress in one day. my mistake. So as I see, there are quite some delegations going on, right? I think there are 3 or 4 staking delegation pools in place at the moment, right? And I think there are about 200.
There are 400 delegators. Yeah, on those four staking pools. So 400 people were able to stake their tokens, and there are more than 100K APT tokens that were delegated on these smaller APT holders.
So just to be clear, I think you guys are going to explore.aptoslabs.com/validators to go and see this information.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Yeah, it's quite incredible to see how quickly the community has jumped into the space and started taking advantage of this opportunity. The one thing I want to call out to other parties in the space is that this is simply just a reference implementation of the interface to do to get access to the staking pools. This is all open source. You can go to our GitHub and you can actually look at our Explorer code, so you can input delegation support directly inside of your own application, wallet, or whatever surface makes the most sense. And the contract is also open source. It's, as they were saying, it's already part of our the Aptos framework, and so you can actually look directly at the contract so you can get confidence that it will behave the way that we expected it to. I'm actually kind of curious on that note, and you talked a bit about like the testability and auditing of this contract. Can you walk me through a little bit of what you folks actually did to get this ready for mainnet?
So basically, I will talk about the whole process, not just the audit one, even though that former one was quite lengthy as well. So basically, we shuffled between 2 or 3 design choices, main design choices, before really starting working on the implementation itself. And that was quite smooth. Then there were some intensive unit testing going on. So that really took like 1 month or so to be done. And in parallel, there has been the auditing that took place, a lot of knowledge transfer going on, and we really had to set up all the specifics, the invariants, and the implementation details with the guys from OtterSec. And hopefully, the only problem that has been found was around that share price manipulation I talked about earlier. So, yeah, the audit and the testing, the unit testing, and the spec verification as well. So was the lengthy parts of the whole process.
Yeah, and just to jump into this discussion, first we had AIP discussion on GitHub, so on Aptos Foundation/AIPs. You have their issues, so we had a discussion there started, and then we have had a proposal on AIP 6.md with the motivation, rationale, and designs and everything. And afterwards, we started on the implementation itself with what Alex has said earlier. So that was kind of the process.
So can you actually walk me through a little bit more of the AIP process? Like, did you get feedback? Did you work with the community? Like, who were the participants outside of yourselves?
So
yeah, we got some feedback from a lot of staking providers that are also involved, like validators that are participants from that are involved in the Aptos ecosystem, and also some folks that were developing explorers or things like that. And there we had like a constructive feedback on some features that were essential from their perspective, and we decided on what would be the essential parts to be implemented and what are nice to haves for next iteration.
And well, so I zoned out for a bit. I guess David, took the reins, and I kind of went with it.
Yeah, I think before we jump, I want to just call out. I know Jill is on the call as well, and she's actually the engineer that did the amazing work behind the Explorer. I'd love for her to be able to do a quick pitch on what that effort was and what other opportunities exist inside the space.
Thanks, David, for saying that. And yeah, so basically, right now we enable delegate staking on Explorer, which gives folks ability to be able to directly stake minimum 11 APTs, as folks has mentioned before, on Explorer directly. Should be really straightforward. So essentially, what you need to do is just go on Explorer and click on Validators tab to see all the available delegated validator pool that you're able to stake with. And if you decided you want to stake, feel free to connect your wallet and then start staking. And the total front end should be pretty intuitive and has all the relevant information about that specific delegator, as well as other relevant information about the amount of rewards you're going to earn and the current state of your staked fund, etc. once you have already staked. Yeah, and always feel free to let us know if you have any questions about the current flow, and or if you run into any issues by leaving a message on Discord or replying on our Twitter thread as well.
And I just want to call out the great work done by Jill, because we've been iterating through a bunch of different bug reports and everything over the last few weeks just to get this in the place that it is. Thank you. One thing I do want to call out is, do you know if we have hardware wallet support for the staking UI?
So basically, right now, we almost support all kinds of wallets. And today we had an announcement about Petra collaboration with Ledger, which we should definitely be able to support. Not yet, but will do very soon. And also another thing I want to bring out is once someone has already decided to stake, there's actually a lockup cycle, meaning that you are able to unlock your fund anytime. But if you want to withdraw your funds back to your wallet, which will take up to 30 days, it's just something else to keep in mind while you decide to stake.
To add something on what Jill has mentioned, I actually tried using Ledger with Petra to delegate on the Explorer, and it worked flawlessly. So Ledger is fully supported within Petra, and it works perfectly with delegation pools.
Yeah, and then I want to also call out, just because I'm looking at the list of wallets, we support all the wallets in this UI from the wallet adapter, including that would be Petra with Ledger and Keystone hardware wallets, as well as I believe Pontum with Ledger wallet, and probably Future with Keystone wallet, as well as MSafe for the multisig. Well, that's awesome. It's great to see that we have this actual support for hardware wallets in the space. Anything else that anyone wanted to talk about before we go to Q&A and introduce anybody else? Okay, well, awesome. Let's go bring people up for Q&A, and they can ask us any questions, or the BeWeather team, or anything about delegated staking as well. So first, it looks like Alex from Everstake wants to come up. It's going to be confusing, two Alexes on the call. Welcome, Alex from Everstake.
Hey, Greg. Hey, everyone. David.
He cut out. Does anyone else hear him?
It's rugging for me too.
Classic. Well, it looks like we now have three Alexes up. So, Alex, go ahead again.
Hope you hear me all right.
Alex is now a robot.
Yeah, this is like every other syllable comes through right now.
But this
Alex,
does make me wonder how many Alexes we can get up on stage at the same time.
We do have 3 Alexes on. Alex from Everstate, could you like close out your Twitter and come back, and we'll get you back on. But Alex from Mecania, come on up.
Hey there, thanks for having me. My question is about the Ledger support, and I remember looking through some of the Ledger integration code, and it seemed like it would have been impossible to publish a package from a Ledger, even if it was below the transaction size limit for Aptos, because of the way that the like caching and the memory works in Ledger. Has there been a workaround for this figured out? Like, is there a way that I could publish like a 55 kilobyte package using a signature on a Ledger?
Yeah, I know that. So the Ledger integration was some of the work that we had done in collaboration with Pontum, and I know that they were having some issues with the ability to put large payloads onto the Ledger, because then you can't display the whole thing. I think we were thinking about ways we could split that up into different pieces, but I'm not sure it's supported right now.
Got it. I mean, the best I can think of right now is to have a multi-sig where one of them is Ledger and one is hot, and you do the publish transaction from the hot wallet, and then you require the approval of the Ledger. But yeah, still not, I guess, as secure as publishing from a Ledger potentially.
Well, maybe you can have a multi-sig with multiple ledgers, and one hot wallet is the only one that does the publishing.
That's the plan.
Cool. Yeah, let's get Alex from Everstake back up here. Maybe he's not a robot anymore. Alex from Everstake. Alex from Everstake, can you hear me now?
Hey, GM, sorry, do you guys hear me?
Yeah, all good now.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, it was a bad connection here. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for Beware Labs for what you did, at least from Everstake side. I cannot say about all validators. And yeah, I just want to add from our side, we also built something cool for validators for any wallets out here with a wallet SDK. So if your wallet doesn't have staking available, you can do it within a day.
That's amazing. Where can people get more information about that?
If it's okay, I can share it on Jumbotron or just in the comments.
Yeah, let's share in the comments, and maybe we can help make that more widely known.
For sure, I'll be happy to talk about it like next week. Like we can talk with our team as well if that's something that's you should find interesting. But in general, yes, I'll share the link for any wallet out here looking for implement staking. You can do it easily with our SDK.
I think also Evgeny from Nodes Guru is here. They've also developed an Explorer for Aptos staking. Pretty nice, as far as I remember.
I'm glad to see all these people building so quickly to add extra UI support and the ability for people to easily be able to do these things. Because though I think the most important part about this is the decentralization and the ability for anyone to get involved. I think one thing we also didn't mention was how voting would work in the Aptos governance.
Right now, we are working on partial voting, which is still a work in progress. And once that part of the work is done and we update our governance UI, everyone who actually staked into the delegation pool should be able to vote, which will definitely largely increase the decentralization of the network and also help secure our network to be more reliable, etc.
That'd be amazing. Then we can have every single person who's on this Twitter space right now be able to participate in governance themselves, which I think is a great part of democracy. Cool. It looks like Shamrock, you're always here to bring some good vibes. What do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, hello, what's up, Aptos? And yeah, Greg, nice PFP.
Yeah, thanks. It's not like the artist is the one who I'm talking to.
We should address him as Ambassador Yuri right now, or Ambassador Shamrock. Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks. It's not officially announced, so yeah, let's keep it let's keep it like this. So yeah, I have actually some maybe a bit dumb question, but I'm really curious. It was said that like key validators supposed to had like 1 million of APT to stake to be like providers, and now like regular user can have like only 11 APT for staking also. I'm curious, in terms of decentralization, is it really possible that all the basic users with, let's say, minimum amount of 11 APT will be able to outweigh those who have 1 million plus APT in terms of voting, or some other situations?
Well, if you scale enough, so if you have millions of people that have 11 APT, then that's totally doable, right? I guess.
But how to say it? How we can be sure that the person who gathers those people with 11 APT is not the same person who actually got this 1 million APT,
You're saying, how do you tell that a bunch of different someone hasn't hidden themselves as a million other users? I don't think there's any thing against that, but that's what the great thing about the decentralization is. If someone wanted to do that, they could, but I think it would just be roundabout on their own way.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually, my point, that will be some sort of wrong way, but how to prevent this to be ran on wrong way,
I think the important thing to know is that there's no reason to prevent it, and it doesn't make any difference than without, like the original staking way or the new staking way. It doesn't make any difference in the long term on the voting side or the influence side.
But it definitely makes it harder for people who wanna, who would always want to control the network into the way they are, right? Because delegated staking definitely enables regular users to be able to stake, even though it never prevents the situation you're describing from happening, but it makes it a lot more difficult to happen, if that makes sense.
I think it's harder to convince more people to like vote towards a specific option than in the centralized scenario. So basically, if this decentralized system converges to those players having less and less influence, right? Because it's harder to convince or influence a lot of people with 11 APT to vote to the choice you want to be taken, right?
Yeah, I see. I wanted, to raise this topic because I was really, curious how the discussion will go, because I'm 100% not technical guy at all, and my questions mostly goes, out of curiosity, if I understand something right or wrong, or is there actually the way to understand something right or wrong. So I always curious how the technical guys, like, all the engineers, developers and such, will answer my, some sort of humanitarian questions.
Go ahead, Alex from Everstake.
Yeah, I have a question for Alex from Econia and Flavian. So we have seen like a proposal mostly from Aptos team, and I think there was a recent one from someone else. Do you think that's something that will be changed in the future?
Yeah, I think this. So this is one good example of a proposal that's coming from outside the team. So this might come as an way of encouraging other people to collaborate and to look deeper into what needs or what can be improved, and they can be sure that their ideas are taken into consideration. So this is like setting a precedent in a way.
On the topic of, making proposals, if this is, I guess, just something in general for Aptos, I'd say that Acania Labs has been making plenty of proposals. They're maybe not, I guess, as like consolidated or high profile, but we've written, lines of move code or lines of Rust code in the command line, and we've written gas documentation. And I think that is not necessarily particular to Aptos, although Aptos Labs does do a great job of incorporating community feedback. I'd say that it's more so just the nature of open source that the software ends up better if we all collaborate on it. And right now we've already got outstanding pull requests for adding multi-sig support to the command line, among other things. So I definitely would encourage other teams in the space to make proposals of this sort, because if it's something that you need for your project, it's something that somebody else needs as well.
Awesome. I think we have another person who wants to speak, so I'm going to bring him up. And please, everyone, feel free to request to speak. And if you have any questions for the team, Beware, or anybody else who's up here. Additionally, I want to give a shout out to all these great people and projects that are on here. Give them a follow. Acania, Beware, Everstake, and of course, the great Shamrock. Ines Finder, hello.
Hey, thanks for approving my speak request. I've just got a quick question regarding setting up a validator, and how does one go about bootstrapping a validator node in the community, and how do they sort of get community support if they're interested?
That's a great question. So we have, for the actual stuff about how to run a node, you can go to aptos.dev, and there's a section on nodes, and it'll tell you how to run a validator. And then around the specifics of getting involved in the space, you can see that we actually have several delegation pool validators running right now. I think probably Flavian or Alex can give better details than me on how you can get running a node yourself.
Yeah, you don't actually have to run a validator first for the delegation pool to work. So the first step would be to have your staking pool deployed, and you can also use the Aptos name service to give it a name. If you need more details, we can help with that. It's not that complicated. You just buy a name and you point it to your staking pool. And the next step would be to gather a community to delegate 1 million APT tokens. Afterwards, you can move to the next step and have the validator in place. But having this approach, you don't have any costs, let's say, until you gather all the tokens you need and have the community involved. And you can withdraw at any time, so you don't have any time bounds as well.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't realize that you could create the staking pool without actually having the node online. So that's good to know. And another question, quick one. What governance decisions does a validator actually participate in? Are they allowed to participate in like core governance decisions, or just validator sort of governance decisions?
Yeah, so generally what the governance will be deployed, the governance can be used to actually approve any on-chain smart contract execution. So in the case of most of these governance things that we've done so far is about upgrading the network, in making new upgrades to the framework, approving new code, new things to be upgraded. Additionally, turning on or off features, things like that. It could be used for anything else, but that's what it's at. What has been used so far for.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in a little bit here. So we've got the validators. So we've got kind of like a handful of roles. You've got an operator, and that's the entity that basically takes the responsibility of maintaining a node. And then you've got the owner, who's the one that's actually putting forward the staking pool. Pardon? Do you want me to? I can cut off. Or maybe you can't hear me.
No, I was listening. Thanks. So I think someone else.
Oh no! Somebody jumped in and said something. So sorry. Pardon. I'll continue. Okay. So as I was saying, so we have the staking pool that's managed by the owner. So the operators effectively have the ability to determine what node software is running. So if there's a push out of an upgrade or a hot fix or things like that, that's entirely the responsibility of the operator to kind of maintain. The owners are the ones that are actually providing the stakes, are the ones that are actually able to vote on the on-chain protocols, much like Greg was alluding to there in terms of the smart contract aspects of it. And that's why it's so critical to have this delegated staking, because it really empowers the masses to come in and help grow the Aptos decentralization.
Awesome. Thanks for answering all my questions. That's really good to know.
Can I just add something about the delegation pool?
Go for it.
Yeah, so one of the reasons, one of the ways how we encourage community to stake with us, apart from promoting, we have stake, we are cool, we have like the largest number of users and so on. We actually encourage users like NFT holders or people just holding NFTs. We'll be releasing something next week or week after that. So stay tuned for Everstake. So apart from just your average APR, you will be able to win Aptos NFTs. That's all I can say for now.
That's super exciting.
Thanks for all your questions, Enos Finder. I also just added Evgeny from Nodes Guru.
Hey everyone, thanks for approving my request. Hats off to Beware Labs for developing and leading the delegated staking contract on the mainnet. It was cool. I just wanted to add to what Flavian explained to ENS Finder on how to proceed with your initiative to run the validator and staking pool. At our staking portal, aptostake.guru, you could submit custom name or custom details for your staking pool. So your name could be displayed as something you would like it to be displayed with all the necessary details, links to your socials, etc. So stakers will have more easy time finding details on you and maybe deciding to stake to you. So hope that's useful.
Awesome. And it doesn't look like we have any other people who are asking questions right now. So I do want to bring up a slightly different topic of the fact that we've been having Move Mondays for a long time, and we have a few more scheduled up in the future. I'd love to know if anyone has any suggestions or things that they want to learn about from us and things that we can maybe schedule out technical discussions to give people in the future.
I think I'd like to know what kinds of maybe like near and longer term developments are coming down the pipeline. I think the team has done a great job of announcing things that have just landed and are launching soon, but that's not always directly applicable to projects because they sort of have the delay of doing a code freeze and then getting audited and then planning integrations. So if there's some kind of speak about, for example, like the token V2 standard, like if we'd known about that a couple months ago, I think that'd be helpful. And then obviously moving forward, any kind of optimizations on the system front that might change the way it's best for us to run move code. Those are always really helpful to know, especially as projects are, I think, like architecting new things in the future.
Yeah, I'll take a quick stab at this, and then I'd love anybody else to jump on. A lot of the content actually appears early. I shouldn't say. Much of the content appears in the AIP repository on the Foundation GitHub pretty early. For instance, Token V2, I think, had its first draft available in January. But I think the broader issue here is that we have to communicate on more mediums as we're kind of doing the exploration of these types of efforts. Obviously, feedback is always welcome, and we actually worked really closely with the folks at NPixel on Token V2. And there's still room for some improvement in that space. So not to say like we've done great in terms at all of being as open as we possibly could. And so I think in that regard, just mostly like, can we communicate more? I think Move Monday is a great medium. I think we could also leverage Twitter to share out some of our early ideas and concepts. And so I think on that end, I'll pivot over to other things that are coming down the pipeline. We are exploring a new fungible asset standard to replace maybe to sit besides the existing coin standard. In particular, what we found out in conversations was the cash-like nature or the extremely flexible nature of the coin standard was scaring away some entities that we'd really love to bring into the ecosystem for growth. And so we're going to be exploring how we can support that with this new standard. There's actually a pretty comprehensive AIP in the repository, so we should definitely be tweeting that out as quickly as possible. I think from there, we already talked about the voting, the delegated voting aspects. Jill mentioned that. We also have a bunch of efforts to really start focusing on bridging the gap for developers. In particular, what we've noticed is for users and for developers, it's not easy to get into the space, and they end up having to study a lot of any given blockchain to be successful, whether that be in transaction management or wallets or identities. And so we've got a handful of projects coming down the pipelines just to kind of help scale folks up in that space. And so that should actually be beneficial in terms of like not necessarily requiring people to go and pivot towards this. It would just make your applications saner. For instance, I was having a conversation with one of our ecosystems, I think last week, and they were saying, hey, we keep getting sequence number issues. How do you guys go about resolving this? And I think the first and foremost thing is, well, one, we don't have any documentation about it, and second, we don't have any tooling or guides in that space. And so that's where a lot of the forthcoming efforts going to be in. We also are going to be spending a bit more time on just improving the overall educational aspect and documentation. Right now, if you want to be an effective Move programmer, you have to be particularly clever or creative or you have to read a lot of our code to understand the best way to go and build things out. And so we want to definitely be tackling that problem by having an easier entry point into that space and just giving away the various different paradigms or mechanisms that you can use inside of Move to be an effective programmer. And so that's kind of, I think, the big next wave of energy is going to be put towards.
Alex, from Everstake.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that of the outward phrase, alpha is in the up, and not everything like surface. So you might want to dig up a bit, but sharing it and sharing what the progress of the future developments.
Only half that came through for me, but I heard Alpha, GitHub, appreciate giving more information for everyone. So I agree. That makes sense. We'll see what we can do better as well in the future. And like David said, hopefully we have some more documentation as well.
I think we should also call out that if you've been following along, we're doing a massive update to our consensus algorithm. We're moving towards a new mechanism for mempool data distribution called Quorum Store that's going to see a vast improvement in terms of both latency and throughput on the network. And so that's going to be a pretty exciting update. And we probably should have the members of that team kind of come on maybe next week and share maybe a brief synopsis of what Quorum Store is and why it's so great.
Amazing. So, any other questions from anyone around and any thoughts on Move Monday? Awesome. Well, I don't have anything else. Max or David?
Amazing.
No, I just want to say thank you so much to Beware for building this out, for making this happen. I'm super stoked to have it. You can see we've got a ton of people in the ecosystem that have quickly adopted delegated staking, and looking forward to continued collaborations.
Yep, it was a pleasure to work with you guys, and we can't wait to see what else we can contribute with. APIs or other tooling. Happy to see and how the ecosystem will evolve.
Great to see all this love. And one last thing that I forgot about, David, is everyone who's going to Consensus this week, David and I will be in Austin. So we will be there Consensus at the Aptos House event. Please be there, come ask us questions, and eat some burgers or whatever else it was going to be there. So it should be exciting.
Amazing.
Sorry,
Amazing.
It should be amazing. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this episode of Move Monday, and we'll see you next week.